Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, I'm Jasmine, and I love unpacking big psychology research questions in a way that's actually makes sense for parents, students, and curious minds. So today we're tackling a huge one. How do kids become excellent at something? Is it a talent, hours of practice, the way we parent, or the kind of school environment that they grow up in? We're going to look at three fascinating perspectives. One is a psychology study on gifted musicians. Two is an economic analysis on on investing in kids. And then the infamous famous, whichever you want to call it, tiger moms. And we're going to be unpacking all of this and just diving right in and see how we go. But yeah, so by the end of this, we'll have a set of takeaways for both parents and educators and maybe bust a few myths about child prodigies along the way. So grab a tea, a coffee, or if you're a parent like me, maybe that cold cup of reheated. I'm sorry, it is off script today, guys. I am reading off a script today, just so you know. So to stick to the script, and I'll let you know when I go off script. But grab a tea, grab a coffee, and let's just dive right in. So let's go into the part one of the myth of a child prodigy. So if you know what a child prodigy is, it's basically like this really high, talented, gifted kids that just a genius, just a prodigy, like a genius. Yeah. So okay, so picture this: you're at a concert. A 12-year-old walks out, sits at the piano, and plays Chopin like an angel. What's your first thought? Wow, they must be born a genius. Well, a study by Sloboda and Howe, it's Howe, Howe, two psychologists, weren't so sure. So in the 1990s, they studied 42 kids, which is not a great sample size, but it is 42 kids, at a special music school in England, and they also interviewed 20 of their parents, and this is what they found. I'm going to go right into it. Half of these kids didn't show any special talent early on. No Mozart at age 3, no Beethoven at age 4, just your average, normal kids. The most exceptional students often came from families that weren't even musical. So let's take a moment there and really think about this. Kids from child prodigies, you kind of like you'd assume that they come from parents with a musical background, right? But no, like the research shows that it's not so. So there's hope for parents like me that don't have a like music background. Like my mom plays piano, but I'm in no way musical. I love music, but not not talented. But yeah, so the most exceptional students came from families that weren't even musical, and the kicker is the best kids didn't practice more hours than others. So if you the practice wasn't the key. So yes, they did practice, but the kids that were the best, they didn't do more hours, which is incredible. They practiced consistently. So that I think that's the key. That consistency is the key. And across a few different instruments, they had parents who supported and encouraged them. And we're just going to unpack all of that today and see what this means for us. So the big myth of born prodigy is actually mostly a myth. So let's get into parent tip number one. Parent tip number one: don't wait for talent to show up. Give your child opportunities, whether it's music, art, reading, or sport. You never know what to spark their interest until you provide them the chance to, right? So always actively provide opportunities. I do try to do this a lot with my kids. We pretty much have a bit of everything. But the thing is, like, I think the key that I'm personally lacking for myself, my husband is great at this, bless him, but I'm not as consistent. I tend to wither off. And the key is to be consistent. And of course, part two of this series would be the practice makes progress. So it doesn't make perfect, as we usually assume. It's practice makes progress. Now, about practice, you've probably heard practice makes perfect, but what this study shows, so it's actually more like practice makes progress with the right support. And here's what stood out. Only about 14 of the kids were fully self-motivated. Most needed encouragement, routines, or even supervision from parents. So not just like telling your kids to go do it, but actually sitting with them and being there, being present, and being engaging with them in the moment. Exceptional students often had fewer formal lessons than the average ones, but their progress per year was actually faster. So what this means is that it wasn't about grinding hours and hours endlessly, but it was actually about practice that was steady, meaningful, and scaffolded by adults. I'm really bad at this. So, like, this is something that's really helpful for me as well, because I need structure. My husband's really good at routine, and I'm just good with ideas. No, I do try to do my best with the kids. I do take them to the lessons, especially when I'm juggling life. But it's definitely it needs teamwork, guys. So yeah, let's focus on parent tip number 2 is quality, not quantity. So a consistent 20 to 30 minutes of focused practice every day is far more effective than 3 hours of tears and resistance on a Sunday. Kind of intuitive, you'd think, but forcing and over forcing their kids wouldn't provide a better outcome according to the study. And honestly, it's the same with us as adults. Imagine trying to cram for an exam the night before, which you do way too often, versus being consistent in short study sessions. One feels like torture, which I tend to do too much. The other one actually works. And so let's bring in a totally complete different perspective. Economics. James Heckman, a Nobel Prize winning economist, studied what happens when we invest in kids early. What happens? His conclusion: skills build on skills. And here's what that means. When kids develop strong early skills, such as cognitive, social, emotional, it creates a foundation that makes future learning a lot easier. If kids fall behind early, it becomes a lot harder and more expensive to catch up later. So I think this is where it gets a bit hard for me as well, because you're meant to start early. And while I would love to believe that I did start very early and I consistently tried, there were a lot of times where I feel like I'm falling behind or it's too late for me. Even though Hickman says this, guys, I do encourage you to just start. Regardless of where you are on your journey, just start. Because the first time I heard that it was too late for my child was when they were 2.5 years old. That was the 2.5. We went to this school, this really, I don't call it, this fancy school. This is what and on the phone, they said to me, "Oh, your child, your child's 2.5. It's too late." And I think that really did something early on in my parenting journey. Just having that belief, when they were 2.5. But it's okay. Just try regardless of wherever you are. And I encourage that you do. I encourage that you invest into your kids. Just you don't have to go all out and do all these classes or whatnot. Just do it in your own home. My husband consistently does homework with them every single day, and that pays off so incredibly. But yes, let's get back to the script. Keeps me grounded. Yeah. So he even created something called the Heckman curve, which is basically the earlier you invest in your children's development, the bigger the payoff. Waiting until high school is a lot less effective, but as I said, while I agree with Hickman, just start. It's never too late. It's never too late. Think of the early years as planting seeds, reading out loud, encouraging curiosity, teaching emotional skills, and giving kids room to problem solve. Those little things compound over time. And this is also a tip if you're an educator. Invest in early education programs, high quality preschools, accessible support for disadvantaged families, and teachers trained to nurture curiosity can change life trajectories completely. Finding a good teacher is just so important, or a teacher that actually cares and wants to teach their kids. And I think it's, yeah, it's really important. And now into the tiger mums. Let's talk about Amy Chua. You probably heard of her. She wrote an essay called "Why Chinese Mothers Are Superior." This is her essay. I'm just quoting her. And here's the gist, right? Her daughters weren't allowed sleepovers, play dates, or even school plays. They had to practice piano or violin for hours each day. Straight A's weren't just encouraged, they were required. Is this triggering anyone? Is this triggering any of your childhoods? Because actually, mine wasn't like that, believe it or not. My parents are completely the opposite of this. But I hear that this happens more than often in a lot of Asian families. Chua argued that nothing is fun until you're good at it, and kids don't naturally want to work hard, so parents must enforce discipline until they excel. Once they excel, then it becomes enjoyable. This style of parenting is what's often called the tiger mom parenting. It gets results, but many kids raised this way do achieve incredible things. However, it comes with its cost, as you'd expect. Burnouts, pressure, strained relationships. So leads us to parent tip number 4. Discipline and high expectations matter, but research does show that kids thrive best when this motivation and encouragement is balanced with warmth, encouragement, and emotional support. So she's doing great, but let's not forget there's also a high, I don't want to throw stats out there, but there's a high percentage of my, like, even people that I know personally with very high achieving families, they're often very depressed. I want to say that, but at the same time, I know a lot of people, even without high achieving families, are depressed. So just one of those things. I don't know the research behind that yet, but I just hope that it is balanced, because balance is key, right? Balance is key for a lot of things, which, let's just put it all together and compare the 3 perspectives. We got Sloboda and Hal, where he says, talent isn't destiny. Excellence comes from consistent, meaningful practice and support by adults. While Heckman says that early investment matters most. Skills build on skills, and the earlier the foundation, the greater the payoff. While Chua believes that discipline and enforced practice can build excellence, but often at the cost of joy and balance. So what does this tell us? Here are some big ideas that kids flourish when we combine early opportunities, consistent practice, and supportive parenting. So let's break that down into a few practical principles that we can all follow right now in our everyday lives. So number 1, expose, don't impose. Expose, don't impose. Gives kids the chance to try things early, but don't panic if they're not prodigies at 5. Not many are. Number 2, consistency beats intensity. So build daily learning habits instead of rare, exhausting marathons. Consistency. 2. And number 3, balance structure and love. I don't know if you can hear that. Kids outside. Balance, structure, and love. Set expectations, but let your child feel safe and supported beyond performance. 4, invest early. Read, play, teach emotional skills, and build curiosity from toddlerhood. These are the foundations at first that last a long time. Number 5, focus on breath. 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 Academic and musical excellence are great, but so are social skills, creativity, and resilience. So, where do tiger moms fit into this? Consistent with the research, they're right about persistence. So, consistent with the research, they're right about persistence, high expectations, and the reality is that kids rarely push themselves to excellence without parental involvement. So, inconsistent with the results. Inconsistent with the research, however, is that tiger moms often focus narrowly on academics and music, while research says that a broader early environment such as social, emotional, playful, are just as crucial. Play is so important. That's one of the biggest work I feel in under 5s is their play, and there's just so much happening in their play that we're unaware of, which we'll get into next time. I'm sure we'll come around to play, because it's just one of those skills that's so looked past. But yeah, so in short, tiger moms capture the discipline but miss the balance and breadth. So in conclusion, how do kids become excellent? Not through innate geniuses, well, I'm sure some do, but through sheer hours of grind and not through perfectionism alone. So they become excellent when they grow up in environments that invest in them early, support consistent, meaningful practice, and balance discipline with love. So for parents, don't wait for talent, plant seeds early, don't chase perfection, and nurture persistence. And remember, kids grow best when love and structure walk hand in hand. And if you're an educator, prioritize early education, create spaces that nurture curiosity, and support families in building strong foundations. And that's it. I hope that you enjoyed this. Thanks for sticking with me through it all. And if you enjoyed it, please hit the like, share button, or just talk about this with your teachers, and definitely work on that team, that system, that network that nurtures our kids, or if you're just interested in general. So until next time, guys, keep planting those seeds. Thanks. Bye.